What if the hero's henshin, not the flash of faux lightning or the clank of contrived chrome, but the quiet creak of a belt too tight around a waist worn by years, summoned not saviors from the screen, but the savage self you'd shelved in some suburban sarcophagus, the synthetic squeak of pleather against polyester like a promise peeling at the seams, the bitter bite of instant ramen reheated one too many times on your tongue like triumphs tasted too late, calloused palms gripping a cardboard cutout that crinkles like crumbling convictions, the faint, rubbery reek of old action figures mingling with the musty mold of a middle-aged man's attic, and mirrors misted with morning breath reflecting a face fractured between the kid who kicked Kaijin and the clerk who clocks in at dawn. This is the ache of the armored everyman, where hope's hesitant hum wars with despair's dirge, sacrifice the silent script binding fantasy to the frayed, identity a transformation that twists not with a twist of the wrist but a wrench in the gut, evoking the earnestness of Rocky Balboa's first flight up those Philadelphia steps, not in sweat-soaked glory but in the grinding gait of a grinder grinding toward grace, one undercard underdog's uppercut underscoring the universal urge to be, the belt that buckles but never breaks, one otaku's oath, a world's unwitting waveform, what rusted rider in your relic drawer rides the rails of regret, revving toward redemption's roar. On October 5, 2025, as fall's first fog fingered the fringes of fantasy feeds from Tokyo to tabletops, Tojima Wants to be a Kamen Rider, a sign-in-send-up scripted from manga's meta margins, unbuckled its premiere episode, the inaugural ignition in a serialized saga that hurtles from hobbyist's haze into the hard knocks homage of heroic heartaches, kickstarting an arc where tokusatsu tropes tangle with the tenacity of turning 40. It captivates from the closet's cautious creak, a salaryman's sideline solitude splintered by shocker-shirt scoundrels, a high school haunt haunting the horizon, and hankerings honed in the heat of half-remembered henshins, teasing the torque of trials without twisting the tragic torque, like the hesitant heroism in the Iron Giantess junkyard jaunts, where one robot's rumble rouses the reluctant to rumble back. It straps you into the spandex of second chances, belt buckle biting your belly, the addict's dust dancing in your draft as if your youth yelled from the yellowed pages. Have you ever felt the weight of a wish unfulfilled? Its warp a wry reminder that the rider you ride is the one reined within? That's the rev here. Not the Kaijin's kick, but the knot in your kek's yearning. How does one out-of-shape oath outpace the ordinary? Lock and load. The legend lurks, laced with laughs unloosed and the fluorescent flicker of a 40-something's fluorescent lit limbo, where part-time punches clock in at convenience store counters and mountain meditations mock the mundane. Episode 1 resurrects Tanzaburo Tojima from the manga's Maiden Murmurs, Chapter 1's Attic Agonies, evoking the envoys of Fight Club Asterisk's first fisticuffs, where one fractured facade frays the fight from within. No prior episodes to prelude this pilot's plunge into poignant pandemonium. We trail his tenure as tokusatsu's tragic torchbearer, flashbacks flickering like faulty film reels to high school heroics against delinquent shocker stand-ins, a collection's cull catalyzing a crisis of conviction, only for opportunistic outlaws, Yakuza yokels yuck-king it up in villainous vestments, to yank him from yen-pinching stasis into street-side showdowns. Yuriko Okada orbits as enigmatic Echo, her gaze a glitch in the grid of his grayscale grind, as vignettes vivify vendettas veiled in vintage vinyl. Dolls? No, dummies dancing on the dumb luck of destiny's dice. Subtle surges surface, protective posturings amid pedestrian perils, a spectral skirmish where spandex substitutes summon steel-spined resolve, invitations extended like illicit inserts to a tournament where trophies might mimic the talismans of true trials. It transitions forward with deceptive dexterity, from dreamer's doldrums to do-gooder's drag, strands snagging like suspenders in the storm. What waveform warps the warden's watch? How does a single snap summon the symphony? You hunker there in the humid haze of the half-lit hall, action figures' articulated arm aching in your achy grip, the Yakuza's yukata rustling like a riddle half-revealed, pulse pitching to the peril's pounding pitch, parched for the plot's poignant progression. The credits crackle like a cassette's cruel cue, but the curiosity's crescendo, coiled, crashing, craving your cue to continue the cadence. This premiere propels the pandemonium like a poorly parked motorcycle mid-henshin, zippy yet zesty, adapting manga's chapters 1 to 3 into a meta-montage that modulates from memoir's malaise to melee's mirth. Fidelity to the source's subversive subtlety sans its sprawling soliloquies on tokusatsu trivia. Revelations ripple with relish, the Yakuza's yokelish yen for shocker shtick, Tojima's attic agonies as armature for action, a cliffhanger creaking with convened catastrophe as Confederates crest on compromised cabals, pretending partnerships perilously poised on pop culture's precipice. No narrative nosedive. Instead, a surge from setup stall to skirmish's spark, pacing a punchy poise that parcels prologue's punch with poignant pauses, dramatic denouement echoing the manga's mischievous meter, where exposition erupts from environmental escapades rather than enumerated encyclicals. cyclicals, fan-flagged cloudy aspects, the meta-mantle, manga's mimicry mockery or homage's heart. Yuriko's yarn, a yarn spinner's yarn, or Yakuza's yoke. The high school haunts hazy hook, abrupt as it aches amid adult ennui. The arc's abutment to tokusatsu tropes without the transformation's tangible torque dissipate under manga's microscope. Chapter 1 codifies the conceit as calculated commentary. Tojima's travails a tribute to Kamen Rider's kernel, Takahashi-esque takedown of trope tyranny, per creator Hiroyuki Takei's afterwards. His henshin, a heartfelt homage sans hardware. The anime's abbreviated allusions, a sidelong sneer at suitless suits, flashbacks flickering fidelity. Honing this without harangue. Yuriko's atre evokes enigmatic escalation. Her orbit an insidious irony per Chapter 2's undercurrents, ally or antagonist in the anime's amalgam. Its erudite escalation, this episode, alchemizing ambiguities to allegros, reminiscent of the Truman Show's scripted suspicions, where one staged step stages the soul stir. Here, it invites you to intone the intervals, senses steeped in the spandex. Tojima tom-toms as temperament's tempest. His zeal a zipper over zippered zippers, motivations moored in manga's mournful marrow, otaku's odyssey as outlet for ordinary's oppression, choices like collections cull a coda to concealed cataclysms. Wounds well in wistful wax. A father's faint fealty in flashbacks frame, dialogue droll yet dawning depth, surprising in its steadfast snarl against systemic servitude, transformative as Chapter 3's nascent nod to narrative nerve. Yuriko yields as Yoke's yeoman, charisma a carapace concealing sacrificial sinews, growth glimmers in gregarious grapples. Manga's undercurrents unveil her as anchor's apprentice, utterances unyielding yet unveiling yearnings for yield. The Yakuza yokels yip as yokel yahoos, their villainy a vaudevillian veneer. Their silhouettes sharpen as sonatas. Tojima's tantrum, less tantrum than tempered tango. Yuriko's yield, a fissure in facade's finery. Were they transformative? Tellingly, akin to Rocky's roll rounds, where one trainer's tough love tunes the underdog. I think Tojima's tenacity tickled a tendon. What untempered tune in your treble clef tempts the tempest? Henshin hear hymns not mere masks but manhood's hymnody. Does delusion's decibel demand demise, or distill desire's dialect? It vibrates in Tojima's tussle, contending code's calculus of conformity. His hammer's a harmonic of humility and hidden heat. And Yuriko's yoke, morality's measured meter where sacrifice scores the system's soul, hopes halting him against despair's discordant drone. Beyond bars, it burgeons in the Yakuza's gaze. A Nietzschean noise querying can camp catalyze catharsis. The cosplayed perish for the pit, resonant as the greatest showmanist spotlight sting, where one ringmaster's rumble rouses the ragged. Its vein-valved rumination, veining vibes to our own vexed vexations. In the waveform of the wistful, what silence summons your solo, lore layers like loops in a looper pedal. The mundane milieu a mosaic of meta-mischief, where Kamen Rider kitsch kits the kingdom. Yakuza's yokel yen a yoke on the yokels, complicating the cosmos with manga's Chapter 1 codicil of tokusatsu tapestries. Fiction's filigree fraying the fabric of the frayed, enriching the ether without excess elaboration. The Attic accretes from afterthought to arena, its axioms a archipelago of anomalies that allure as they augment. Script snaps sharp as a suit's snap, poetic in its punchline's precision, lines like Tojima's trope takedowns cliché-culled, laden with lore's levity, impactful as aphorisms that abide after applause like Spielberg's sidebars, snappy, synaptic, summoning the snark beyond the screen. Foreshadow frolics in flippancies, resonance in riposts that reverberate post-pilot, such as Yuriko's quip, a quirky quaternion carrying quest's quietude. Its banter that bites, each barb a beacon. What winged word from your witty wars might wing the weight from your wings? Lidden films legerdemain limbs as legend's lens. Fluid fusions of frantic fisticuffs and faux forms, symbolism in scarlet spandex. Crimson's clawing against cerulean cosplays, channeling Power Rangers' pixelated pummels in polished palettes, where lighting lashes like lens flares, shadows schooling spooks in silhouette surge. Stillness in Tojima's stare sculpts suspense's sting. Movement in melees measure a maelstrom of meticulous momentum. Beauty betokens bond's bittersweet bloom, molding mood as a mallet's murmur, majestic, mordant vista's vogue as virtuoso's vista. Overheads on ovations orphans mirroring meshed malfunctions, visceral vignettes on vein-varnished vigor sinking to sentiment's swell, editing's elegy a escalating echo, abrupt accents amplifying assaults, akin to Kikas's kid-gloved grit where gadgets ground the goofy. It mirrors marrow, Tojima's ken arcing from austerity to affray, the Yakuza's gloom expanding in enigmatic expanses. OST operates as Oracle's opus, motifs of metallic marimbas murmuring through synth swell surges, elevating entreaties to epic's edge, silence and sabotage's suspension shriller than shattered shells. Did that suspended synth, mid-mockery, mimic the held hitch of a heart's half-beat, etching like error in echo? Katsuyuki Konishi's Tojima thrums in taut tenacity, timbre a tempered, treble that trembles on threshold's brink, intensity incarnating irony's itch. AI Kayano's Yuriko yields with silken severity, tremors teasing the tender under taunts torrent, while the ensemble's echoes embody essences, delivery a diaphanous drift. Stellar showings, voices not voicing but vibrating, vesting verve in vocal voltage. This episode electrifies with an ebullience that's equal parts exhilaration and exasperation. The henshin's heartfelt hoax hoisted my hopes like a half-baked belt, wonder welling in the warp of worlds colliding, moments of mirrored malfunctions leaving laughter's ligature, scars of schadenfreude sparking subversive sympathies. I felt fizzed, fortified in Tojima's fortitude, echoing my own escapades evading the everyday entanglements where one off-kilter outburst overthrows the ordinary. Veiled in vignette's vivacity, the vertex vaults as vicinities vivisecting in vibrant vortex, a fulcrum where feints fracture, fates fusing like biggest wishful wizardry birthing bonds from bunkers. It iterates indelibly. In the idiom of the irked, does one imp's impudence impel the infinite? You hoard it, this hilarity, philosophical pixels patterning private puzzles. What pint-sized provocateur in your playlist pricks the prickly path to paradise? The glitch gleams, unpatched, plug in, and play the prankster's part reverse rifling the riffs. Velocity's verve, fans flag as frenetic and farce's flood, reframes as romcom's rocket, a stylistic simulacrum of slapstick sprint, mirroring the manga's mischievous momentum to marinate the madness's marrow. Clichés cling might cramp creativity, yet its thematic truss, tethering tropes to trenchant twists akin to the mask's manic masks where masks mask the man. Vocal variances veer vivaciously in villainy, read Vixen's verve, but this vivifies the vivisecting vapidity's veil. Adoration adheres, discerning dissection defers to delight. Flaws as fireworks in a festival of frolic. Episode 1 exalts in effervescent exchanges and evocative ensembles. It sprints slight stutter a sprightly spur. It consummates its caper, catalyzing clichés cash into cathartic cavalcade, narrative nerve netted with naughty nuance. To thumb one's nose at the tune-up is to tune out the tumult's tune. The belt buckles, daring your deadlock. What if this middle-aged masker masked your midlife malaise, his henshin hoisting the heroics you holstered? The screen summons, siren sharp, surrender, and savor the sting of serendipity's slap. Have you ever fastened a belt not of leather and buckle, but of longing and latex? Its clasp cold against your abdomen like the first chill of a dawn patrol, whispering promises of power while the weight of unstruck poses presses like an unread script against your ribs. Or caught the acrid whiff of rubber soles scorching linoleum in a midnight mimicry, the fluorescent buzz overhead mocking the heroic hum you chase, as shadows stretch like forgotten cue cards across the gym floor? In Tojima Wants to be a Kamen Rider Episode 2, I Am Tackle, aired October 12, 2025. This ritual of rehearsal becomes a requiem for the road not ridden, pivoting the series' inaugural arc from Tojima's tangential tussle into the shadowed spotlight of a surrogate seeker's solitude. Resonating with the futile flourishes of Walter Mitty's daydream duels in Thurber's Typewriter Tales, or the spectral salutes of veterans in Hemingway's Hollow Homecomings, where medals gather dust amid the drone of domestic defeat, it excavates identity's elastic edge. What if the transformation you crave is merely a mask for the mediocrity you flee? I lingered in its lamplight, the episode's allure a subtle snare, tender in its tenacity, yet threaded with a tremor that tugs like a half-zipped henshin suit. Can you feel it, that synthetic squeak of spandex against skin in a schoolyard silent as a soundstage, the faint flicker of a TV screen casting heroic hues on your unposed profile? The frame doesn't forge the fighter, it forges the fire, each unignited ignition an invitation. What latent legend might your own lapsed rehearsals reignite if you refuse the fade to black? From Episode 1's serendipitous scuffle, Tojima's impromptu incursion into infamy, his plastic panoply parrying shockers shambling sentries amid the banal backdrop of a bodega brawl, this sophomore spotlight swivels to the sidelines, where silent spectators stew in sideline spite. Yuriko Okada, that unassuming pedagogue in pleated skirts and poised restraint, commandeers the stage. Her days a dirge of diagramming sentences and diffusing disruptions, her dusks devoured by disciplined drills in dimly lit dojos, each kick a catechism to the canon of her chosen champion. Tidings of Tojima's televised tangle trickle in like ticker tape taunts, her ire ignited by this interloper's inadvertent inheritance. Providence, that prankish prompter, promptly proffers the plot's pivotal ploy when those same synthetic scourges slink into her sphere, their grotesque gait a grotesque gift demanding her debut. Whispers from the wings, a Yakuza lurker's laconic lore, lace the limbo with latent links, while adolescent admirers add awkward applause. It vaults the vignette from vicarious victory to visceral vigil, each veiled vow a vector toward the valor unvanquished. Envision yourself in her espadrilles, the echo of erasers on easels fading to the thud of fists on pads, the chalky residue on your fingers flaking like failed feints as fortune's footlights flare unbidden. Does the summons stir your continues, or does its shadow shrink the script you've scripted in solitude? The saga segments its summonses shrewdly, each sidelong glance a gambit for the grandeur withheld. What whispered warrants might the next cue confer? Episode 2 orchestrates the Odyssey with the orchestration of an overture offstage, transmuting Tojima's tangential triumph into Yuriko's yearning yoke, revelations of rival reveries, a tutor's timetable twisted by tokusatsu tenets, unfurling into a torsion that transplants trope's tyrants into tangible threat, the shocker simulacra solidifying from send up to siege, perching on a precipice where pedigrees collide like clashing call sheets. Pacing performs with poised precision, languid loops through lesson plans and lone lunges yielding to abrupt assaults in alleyway ambushes, harmonizing hilarity with the heritage's hushed heft akin to the tempered tempos in Whiplash's metronomic maelstrom, where practice's plod propels the punch. Dramatic equipoise endures, though aficionados essay cloudy aspects, shocker seepage from celluloid to cobblestone. How do these homunculi haunt the here and now if the writer's realm remains relegated to reruns? Yuriko's yoke to tackle, a fixation that flares sans full fruition. The Yakuza's yen for yoke, his villainy a vogue that vacillates from farce to foreboding. Faithful to manga's chapters 2, Tackle Isn't Dead, and 3, Yakusaru Shibata's serialized strokes in Weekly Shonen Magazine, commencing 2018, where the anime augments Yuriko's yearnings for emotive elasticity. These nebulosities navigate as narrative nexuses. Shocker's invasion is Shibata's shrewd sleight, a realm where retro relics ripple into reality via ardent adherence auras. Chapter 2's coda crystallizes Kaijin's conjuring as karmic kickback from cosplay's collective creed, not cosmic. Cataclysm, upholding the humor of homage made hazardous. Yuriko's ardor, anchored in Chapter 3's flashbacks to formative fictions. Her tackle trail, a tributary of trauma transmuted to tenacity. Her widow's walk, a widow's whim woven from paternal primers. The Yakuza's quirk, quartered in quirky asides, queers the quotidian. His shocker shtick a satirical shield against societal stasis, enmeshing the mythos with mundane machinations. This impetus doesn't implode. It implodes inward, infusing imitation as impetus. The figures flare with fervent filigree, essences etched like emblems on an unemblazoned breastplate. Yuriko vaults as the vignette's vital vein. Her veiled viscera, the vacuum of valor's vanishing, Tackle's tragic terminus in canon lore, drives distilled from didactic drudgery's despair, decisions, donning the drab for the dazzle, dissecting doubts with didactic directness, consonant in their covert conviction yet metamorphic, startling in a spasm of spotlight-seizing splendor that sundered her scholastic shroud, mirroring the militant metamorphoses of Joan of Arc's armored awakenings. Tojima, the titular tangent, tempers via terrace cameos. His quips a quirky quarantine, maturation murmured in muted mentorship. The Yakuza, that chiaroscuro counterpoint, discloses drives dented by doldrums, his banter a burr of brash bravado. Asano's awkward avowals append adolescent asymmetry, his homage a halting him, consonant, as costumed compulsions. Metamorphic? In the melee's murmur, yes, advancement accrued in every accolade embraced. The episode excavates emulation's elastic enigma, potency's provisional pose in pantomime, where ethics elasticizes in the guise of glorified gambit, ablation the oblique offering of ordinariness for the oracle of the oniric. Past placards, these plights proliferate via pursuits. Yuriko's pursuit a philosophical pivot on pop's potency, incarnating in the Yakuza's yen for yoke, antagonism as analgesic for aimlessness, a subsistence signal echoing Sartre's stage semblances or the sacrificial spotlights in Network S newscast neuroses. Does aspiration's armature armor the anima, or does despondency's dowdy drape demarcate the divide? Tojima's terrace tantalizes the threshold. Fandom as bulwark, determination's a dance of juvenilia reclaimed amid maturity's mire, mythos multiplies meticulously. Shockers spill over from screen to sidewalk, a cadre of contrived cretins culled from cultural cast-offs, embellishes the expanse with edicts of echoed existence, where tokusatsu's tenets twine with tedium's toil, convoluting the chronicle with convergences of caricature and crisis, antiquity's ardent avengers afflicting the actualized. Every day, the libretto lacerates like a latent lash, incisive as an inset icon, lyrical in its laconic lilt, transfiguring template into trenchant toasts. Yuriko's yearns yield yeoman's yarns veined with vintage vim, presaging partitions that pulse post-pull like the poignant pleas in Good Will Hunting-esque couch confessions. The Yakuza's yarns, yoked with yokel yowls, reverberate with the roar of renegade refrains. Potent, pervasive, each locution a lure of legacy and levity, legating you to the lore. Catch Asano's ardent aria avalanche like a pupil's plea in the Karate Kid's koi pond koans. Does it hone your heart, this oratorical oscillation? The lexicon doesn't lecture. It lures, each lacuna a lure to the legend lurking. Lidden Films' legerdemain limbs the lunge, supple surges in solo sparring, silhouettes splintering in spurious splendor that signify shifting shifting semblances, scarlet sigils stark against scholastic sepias. Illumination incises yearning. Vespers veiled violet veiling vigils, umbras undulating in uncanny upsurges to evoke existential entanglement. Stasis in Yuriko's ruminative repositions relents to riotous rushes of resistance, allure and acerbic ambrosia, not accoutrement, but augury, the counterpoint of color and crepuscule chiseling catharsis from chimera. The vista's verve, panoramic pans of practices persistence paralleling profusion's pandemonium, proximate portraits pinning pupils in. Pantomime's pinch, montages measured measures mirroring mimesis that magnifies malaise, akin to Anderson's asteroid city tableaus of the trapped troubadour. Configurations capture convulsions, each vista a vault for the viscera's vaulting. The score summons as spectral summoner, incipits jaunty jangle gelling into jaunty japes, show strains surging like sepia specters, bewitching blanks with balladry's balm, apotheoses ascending in anthem assaults that abrade like artificial adversaries. Quietude quests quintessentially in quartered quarters, a refrain redolent, Konishi's Tojima, a weary welterweight's wheeze laced with latent largesse, coils camaraderie with coy craving, enunciations excavating the echoes, and snaring you in the sonics as if your timbre might temper the tumult. This episode evoked an exquisite equilibrium, melancholy's murmur mellowing mirth, marvel mustered at the mentor's muted metal, welts from Yuriko's yearned yet yoked youth that welter like the wheels of waylaid warriors in the wrestler's ring-worn regrets. Instances of imitative impetus left lambent legacies, flickers in the fiend's fortuitous foray firing a fierce fidelity. The apex aligns as artifice's apocalypse, a fate's fracas where facades foment fray, refracting the rider's ruddy reality. It invokes immortal interrogations. In the guise of our girded guises, do we dwindle in the dullness of dictate, or does the henshin's haste husband the heart's haphazard hollows? Perceive that pulse, peruser, paralleling the protagonist pangs in Fight Club's fractured fisticuffs. Raw, rhythmic, resounding through resolve, the ruminations recur, a rupture unrepaired via reverse reading, the contemplative cadences cautious creep, the obscurity of Shocker's seepage, might mumble as muddle, intricacies ink rusting into incomprehensibles, yet reframe. These are reverential riffs, thematic throbs echoing Shibata's satirical skeins, where shrouds of simulacra solicit the spectator's scrupulous scrutiny. Yuriko's yoke a deliberate decrescendo to the dawn. Admiration arcs above animadversion, visceral virtuosity as vanguard, though a keener choreography might kindle the casuals. Equilibrated, it's an emblem of excellence. Frailties as fervent fanfares. Episode 2 excels in its emblematic embroidery. Persona profundities plumbed with pertinacious precision, narrative nuances navigating nebulas of nexus, an aesthetic assault that alchemizes Shibata's send-up into sensory surge. Frailties, faint in the footlights, sporadic stutters in stasis's sway, intermittent inundation of inserts. It prevails, potently, an incantation of icon and ID narrative notations nailed to the nexus. Yet contemplate this, the proclamation that prods like a prop's poised prong. What if the pose you procrastinate is the one that promulgates your prowess? Perceiving isn't pastime, it's the whir within your waistband, the dip into the dimness where your dormant declarations demand their due. Henshin forthwith, the rider reposes no longer repressed.